First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you to our third session on the webinar series, Digitization and Innovation, the New Normal. The webinar series is organized by AUC School of Business Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation and AUC Business Association. The focus of this session will be on e-commerce. Digital items are becoming smarter and more advanced day by day. In order to raise a toast to such innovations in this sector and for all the e-commerce entrepreneurs who always inspires us, here are some of the e-commerce experts from the market on how the industry can capitalize from a coronavirus-led boom in online sales. I would like to welcome all of you to our today's sessions. And before starting the session, I would like to highlight some of the webinar logistics. This webinar will be recorded. Once we start, we will mute everyone. Kindly stay on mute, turn your camera off throughout the session. Panelists are able to unmute and mute themselves. The webinar duration is 60 minutes and Q&A will start after the discussion. For the Q&A, at the end of the session, the floor will be open for questions. Please, if you have a question, raise your hand or type your question in the chat box. Once the session administrator unmutes you, open the camera if you wish, of course, introduce yourself and ask your question. If the question is directed towards a specific speaker, please indicate which speaker, and if not, the session moderator will direct your question. Now, I would like to give the mic to the moderator of this session, Dr. Ahmed Tolba. Dr. Tolba is the Associate Professor of Marketing at the American University in Cairo, and we're very glad to have him today moderating this session. I would like you all to welcome him and welcome all of our guest speakers. Dr. Tolba will be introducing them tonight, and please sit and enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hela. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to the webinar, and I'd like to thank the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation and Business Association for organizing this event. I would also like to welcome our prominent speakers today. So today I'm going to introduce the three speakers, and I'm going to ask a question to each of them at the very beginning of the session. And then I'm going to open the floor for Q&A. So hopefully most of the time will be for Q&A from your sides. So please try to organize your questions. You can raise your hand to ask a question, or you can also write a question in the chat box. So this is how we're going to move forward with it. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers right away. The topic today is about digitization and innovation, the new normal. So we're all living this pandemic effects, and we see how it affects entrepreneurship, affects people, and more importantly, how we can benefit from it. So looking at the new normal for us is not about looking at it as a challenge, but also looking at it as an opportunity, looking at it about how we can shape the future. And that's how we can start our discussion. So our three prominent speakers, I'm going to introduce them briefly. Let's say ladies first, and let's start with Yasmine Sheikh. Yasmine is a former student of mine. That's the first introduction, right, Yasmine? So,
of course, doctor.
Really very proud to see my students come and become so prominent and successful. So she's a passionate HR professional. So she moved from business marketing to HR, but still into the area of marketing big time, believing in the power of employees. So she got her master's degree from Warwick Business School in human resource management. And accordingly, she is leading the way in the area of talent acquisition and talent management. And I'm going to ask her questions related to her area in a while. So welcome, Yasmine, and thank you for joining the webinar.
Thank you so much for having me.
And second, we have Mr. Omar Sedoudi, and many of us know him very well. Actually, our speakers are very well known in general. So Omar has a lot of big successes. So you can see that he is wearing the Amazon sweatshirt right now. So this tells you that he's working there, but he's not working there. He actually led a huge business called Souk.com that we all know about, and until it was acquired by Amazon. So a prominent entrepreneur, somebody who's really, we all look forward to listening to. Very brief points about him, of course, apart from launching Souk.com in 2010. And of course, we all know what Souk.com was and still is, and great success until it was acquired by Amazon, and currently working there. So he's director of payments for Amazon in the Middle East. He also led Payfort since its inception in 2013, expanding it into 8 areas in the Middle East, focusing on industries such as e-commerce, travel, airlines, telecom, government, and insurance. He also co-founded Accelerabia.com, the first fintech company in the Middle East, in 2005. So a lot of achievements. So if I keep reading the biographies of our speakers here, it's going to be hard, but a brief about his education. He studied finance in California State University, Fullerton. He has a financial advisory certification from NASD. He had a post-degree at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business, and his emphasis is on innovation, design thinking, topics that are really very much relevant to our topic today. So really a great honor to have you, Omar, with us.
Thank you, Ahmed, Professor Ahmed, and it's look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Mr. Hassan Haidar. He has 10 years of experience in investment in MENA startups. So a topic that is extremely relevant right now. Of course, he's the co-founder of Plus VC, a new venture capitalist. And this is a topic that we're going to have a discussion on today, because Hassan was previously the managing partner of MENA at 500 startup. So and he led the firm's growth in the MENA region over the last 5 years, turning 500 startups into most active VCs in the MENA region, and raising and deploying the 500 Falcons fund. So huge expertise in the ecosystem, in investment and in funding in startups. He also was the co-founder and CEO of Tenmu, and it's a company that was very successful to the extent that a case study was written at the World Bank on this startup, and it was taught at Babson. So very proud of all that. And more importantly, now Hassan is venturing into a new move, which is Plus VC. So he left 500 and he's now working on this new venture, the Plus VC. So definitely we'll ask him about that today. So a great honor to have you, Hassan. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And the beauty about the webinars is that each one of us here is almost in a country. Maybe Yasmine is visiting Cairo, but we have Hassan in Bahrain and Omar in Dubai as well. So it's also a regional presence. So without further ado, let me start immediately by my first question. So as I said, I will ask each one a question to answer. So you can expand and elaborate as you want, and then we'll move to Q&A. So I'll start my first question to address to Omar, and it's about the new normal. So we always talk about the new normal after the pandemic and what happened, and what are the trends, and e-commerce becoming it's a present in anyway, but becoming more in the future, expanding in the future. So tell us more about what are the new trends, and of course, don't forget to tell us more about your story and about the Souk.com and the acquisition of Amazon. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Professor Ahmed. So of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has had many implications on all aspects of life, of course, including how people shop, how people study, even how people consume, medicine through telemedicine. So, but I'd like to kind of take a step back and go back a decade, as you highlighted. So I remember, moving back to Egypt after 17 years, after, a short stint in Souk in the UAE, and Ronaldo Mshahor, the founder of Souk, says, you know what, Omar, you're the only Egyptian that I can trust to go and launch Souk in Egypt. And so I did. And I remember early on, trying to, pitch sellers how to sell on Souk and buyers how to buy on e-commerce. And I can tell you that the fundamentals of e-commerce has never changed. So customers look for price, selection, and convenience. And I would say maybe the focus over the last few years were more 60% look for price leadership, around 30% look for the selection, that the merchant has, and around 10% look for convenience. And of course, convenience has evolved over time, whether it be transacting on mobile, whether it be transacting through voice commerce, using like an Alexa device, or using just workout technology like going through an Amazon Go, which is a physical store. So how retail is combined both online and offline, but the fundamentals remain the same. I think COVID-19 has accelerated current trends. It did not really create new trends. So for example, when you look at adoption of online payments or adoption of e-commerce, you find more people are slightly more incentivized to take that last oomph of a push in terms of like, let me try that rather than trying to go outside of the house, or get stuck in traffic or whatever the case may be. So the only thing I would say, maybe the percentages changed a little bit. So maybe 20% or 30% I started looking more if it's the convenience of it, in terms of why do I need to venture out, in terms of going out and buying something. And of course, the logistics and supply chain had a significant role to play. So I remember back in Egypt, our average delivery time was 7 days. Now the average delivery time is 24 hours or 48 hours. So the customer expectation, of course, has significantly changed, and the behavior has changed as well, and taste of preference, not because of COVID, but because of the on-demand and the gig economy. So you order an Uber, and a few minutes later, it's out the door. So our brain doesn't know differently. It's making all these references, and our brain is like, why can't I order a phone or a T-shirt and it should arrive to me within few hours? So when you also look at e-commerce, you also have to look at supply and demand. And from the demand side, it's more about behavior, taste, and preference of the customer, who's the buyer. But from the supply side, you have to look at readiness of a brand or a seller in terms of their catalog, in terms of their listings, how they manage their inventory, efficiently. What do they do in terms of after sales? How do they engage with customers, not only while transacting, but actually after transaction. So what we've seen also during COVID is there was a lot of organizations were caught unprepared, significantly unprepared, and some of which were not able to conduct their business for weeks on end until they were able to establish a business continuity plan. But of course, it was a crash course in terms of digitization. I can tell you at Payfort, usually it would take us 6 months to 1 year to onboard like an insurance conglomerate company, or a pharmacy that has like hundreds of retail spaces. But we were seeing merchants go live in a matter of days. Of course, we had to look at minimal viable products. We couldn't really look at what's a minimal lovable product in terms of an experience and in terms of an offering. But we saw the need and the seriousness of if I don't have any digital presence, or if I have a digital presence but it's kind of mediocre, I really need to start investing in digital presence, because not only it becomes a mainstay, but it could be the de facto channel at some point in time, whether it be a pandemic or any other any other reasons.
Thank you, Omar. I'm sure we'll have a lot of Q&A questions about your experience and more. But that's a very nice compilation of what the new trends could be, or the changes in the trend would be because after the pandemic. So thank you. Let me move on to Hassan and ask you a simple question also about your experience. So this is the question that we are all eager to know. How did you have this entrepreneurial gut and initiative to leave 500 and move and start something new, which we are sure is going to be a great success? And the second is, how do you see the changes in the investment priorities in general? Are there more investments towards the nascent entrepreneurs? Are there certain rising sectors? What about after the pandemic? So would love to listen to you. Thank you.
Sure. I think this is the first time I've told an entrepreneur story. I'm on the other side of the fence now. So yeah, I mean, when I joined 500 Startups in 2014, there wasn't really a lot of activity that was happening in the region in general, and 500 had done a few deals, but it wasn't to the level where it is now. And then started working on getting a fund off the ground, ended up investing in 180 startups over the last 3 years. We built out a pretty significant sort of knowledge transfer programs and a team and all of that. So you know, that was all there. So why leave all of it? I think, you know, really what it boils down to is, what is it that I want to do with my life? And honestly, the answer to that question is, I want to be investing in the best founders that I can find, and I want to support them to the best of my abilities to get them to be successful. And so with Plus VC, what our objective is really, we're looking to support and invest in 120 startups, amazing founders from all across the MENA region. We're moving a little bit upstream, so we won't be investing in ideas anymore, but we will be investing, you know, once you've got a little bit of a product market fit, there's something to show us. That's generally when we'll be investing, probably 3 to 6 months of customer usage or something like that. And honestly, like, you know, the freedom that I'm getting now to be able to build out whatever we need as a firm to make sure that we can more, you know, strongly support the founders that we're helping and investing in, is something that I'm super excited about. So we're building out an entire community base, knowledge base, learning management systems, and all of that. And we're actually bringing technology to the venture capital universe, which, you know, most VCs aren't actually that tech savvy themselves. So hopefully we'll be able to have a role to play in that. And, you know, how did I make the decision? It wasn't an easy one to make. It was really, you know, there's a couple of ways to be driven in life. One of them is very easy. Just stay wherever you're getting the most money, and it's just a financially driven sort of motivation. That's not mine. I'm not that financially motivated. As long as I have a certain level of comfort, then I'm okay. I can send my kids to school and all of that, you know, they won't starve. I'm good. So generally it's, for me, it's about impact. It's about where can I best utilize my sort of talents and my abilities, and how can I best utilize that? And so honestly, like, making a move like this, it wasn't just a decision that was made overnight. It was months in the making. It was, I have a group of mentors that I respect very heavily, that they've led their lives a much longer life than I have, and have experienced a lot more things than I have. And so I spoke to these mentors, talked them through all the changes that were taking place at 500, and how things were shifting there, and how, you know, what I really wanted to do with my life. And then, you know, thankfully, you know, they were pretty supportive. They're like, you know, you've done this twice before, you can do it a third time. So with 10, with the Angel Group, that was the first time. With 500, you know, we built that up in the region. And this is sort of the third and hopefully final one. But yeah, it's been a really interesting sort of challenge, and you know, one of my mentors is like, well, it's your turn to go into the shoes of the founders and you know, basically use the same advice you've been giving them and do something for yourself. I was like, okay, well, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Inshallah, it'll go well. Market reaction has been very positive. Our co-investors, the founders that we supported and helped through 500, have all really been very supportive and have been helping us, which is nice. It's the other way around. And we look forward to really having an impact on founders across the MENA region. And, you know, we really do want to invest in about 120 startups over the next 3 years. We accounted for, with our first fund, about 20 to 25% of all the seed deals across the MENA region. So significant impact, and I want to continue doing that and more in our region and in more regions. So that's my life entrepreneurial story, which is just getting started. Unlike Omar, who has had a lot more experience than I have being a founder and working in an entrepreneurial environment, I just invest. It's a lot easier. So you know, moving to the sort of question of what what are we seeing and what are we excited about, I guess, and what are the shifts that are taking place, I guess, to really piggyback on what Omar was saying. These changes and shifts were happening in the region anyway. All the virus did was very, very quickly allow us to reach the level where I thought we were going to be in 3 to 5 years' time. It basically happened overnight when the lockdowns took place in most of the markets in the region. So there's been a massive shift in adoption for e-commerce and technology businesses in general. I think people have realized that actually this is pretty convenient. We don't have to leave our house to do a lot of stuff. But what is it that's going to stay? I think people have had great experiences with e-commerce during a lockdown, and people have had the worst experiences of their lives with e-commerce. And I think that's the preparation that Omar was talking about. People just were not really ready for any of this. A lot of the more traditional businesses were basically ignoring digitization for the longest period. And we've heard from some of their advisors and corporate finance folks and everyone, they're like, we've been telling them for 3 years to do something. And they've always been like, we'll do it later. It's not that important. And then the day, the shutdowns happen, they're like, oh yeah, we don't have a solution. We need to figure this out. So I'm hoping, there'll be a shift in general mindset within the ecosystem. And I think that's something that's happening. I'm hoping that also there'll be a shift when it comes to more established businesses to really pay attention to and hopefully acquire more startups that might be, a benefit to them rather than trying to build things in-house, because I think a lot of them realize that they can't, it's not the same DNA to build something in-house as it is, as a startup would have. Where is it that we're investing? I mean, honestly, the pandemic's been great. It filters a lot of things. I mean, there's always a silver lining. I caught it in March and I was hospitalized, which sucked, but everything else has actually been a pretty good sort of experience in my career, at least. So what happens is, with this mass adoption of tech, before the pandemic, we were seeing a lot of, I guess, Me Too entrepreneurs that were like, oh, this thing is cool and maybe I'll get some money. I don't really believe in what it is I'm doing, but I'll try. If there's an investor that'll give me some money, I'll figure it out. And I didn't find that to be the most convincing case that I was coming across in terms of founders. But I think with the pandemic, what we saw is it filtered out a lot of these Me Too founders and sort of just, PowerPoint warriors and stuff. It really filtered down to the founders that honestly, passionately believe in what it is that they're working on and building. And despite a pandemic, will continue doing whatever it takes to make their vision a reality. And so it was an amazing filter. And these are founders that honestly I want to back. So, if we had the money right now, there's quite a lot of deals that we want to sort of be investing in and supporting these founders. What sectors? I mean, we're pretty sector agnostic. We don't focus on any single sector. Is e-commerce still viable? Yes, I think we are still very, very low in terms of the online transaction capability in the region. And there's a lot of things around e-commerce that are also pretty important. So logistics and payments like Omar was working on, and a bunch of other things to enable more transactions to take place online more smoothly. I think there's a huge opportunity still there. And within e-commerce, I mean, I wouldn't go and compete against Amazon or something or Noon, but I would probably find niches which are really important. So we've invested in startups that are focused on glasses and contact lenses, Iowa out of the UAE, and they've been doing really well in their niche. We invested in a plant, sort of online plants. You can buy plants online, plantshop.me. We've invested in a bunch of these more specialist sort of providers. And that's generally what's happened also in the US and other more developed markets. You start seeing the overall provider of everything, but you also have specialist needs providers that really focus on what it is that they're doing and do that really, really well. And I think there's a huge opportunity for that in everything. I think we're very underpenetrated when it comes to e-commerce in general in the region. And things have improved because of the virus, but I think we're still nowhere near where we need to be. And so, yeah, we're still going to be investing in pretty much anything and everything, as long as the founders are really capable. They have a sort of a, what I call a bias towards execution. They get things done, don't just sit around and hope things happen to them. And you know, these are the founders that we're looking to support, no matter what it is they're working on, because whatever it is they're working on is probably going to shift many times until they figure out what it is they should be working on. And yeah, that's sort of my thesis. I'm super excited about the next phase of investing in the region, the next phase of founders that are coming out of the region, and the sort of acceleration in development and adoption that has taken place in the region. I mean, before I'd be on a flight, I'd be in 3-4 cities a week. I haven't traveled since March, but business hasn't stopped, and people are sort of more accepting of doing a Zoom call rather than me showing up at their office. That's been great. I hope that continues after the virus. So that's just a few things.
Thank you, Hassan. That's inspirational, and that's and I think a lot of questions are going to be coming, I'm sure, from the audience after these two great speeches. And now we're heading towards the third one. And actually, I've seen a lot of linkage between what Hassan has mentioned and what Yasmine is interested or specialist in, because Hassan mentioned a couple of things that are human, but related to the people. So the first one was related to himself, changing checking what he wants in life, not just the financial return, but also the impact that he can generate and what he wants, what would be fulfilling to him as a person. He also mentioned something related to mentors and how the relationship with people is very important. And the last thing is also, he mentioned something about business, about selection of the entrepreneurs as based on their the founders, their characters, their perseverance. These are the ones he's looking for in investment rather than the people who just me too. So this means that we have characteristics of people who could be entrepreneurs, characteristics of people who could be intrapreneurs, i.e. innovators inside companies. What would be the profile of these people? What would be the talents that would succeed right now in the job market? What should students do in order to build these skills in themselves so that they can be ready and move forward and become as successful as our great speakers today? So Yasmine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Doctor. First, before answering your question, I just want to take a step back and say that being part of the e-commerce industry during such a pandemic has actually given me a chance not to be in a situation where I'd have to lay hundreds of people, but on the opposite, actually, where the hiring has increased. We have faced a lot of booming in our sales and all, and therefore our manpower has increased massively in comparison to other industries. However, the shift was in how we hired people, how we sourced people, how we interviewed people, the way we engage them, the way we engage our current employees. Everything had changed, shifted to virtual. We had to onboard people from India, from Pakistan, from UAE while we're at home in Egypt or in Dubai. We had to engage our 600 plus employees virtually through our Teams or through Zoom. We had to make sure that they're still part of our culture, a part of they're still aware that we're with them, we support them. So many initiatives have been done to make sure that people are still productive. We've also proven that working from the office is not an indicator of how productive you are. You actually can be 100% more productive if you're still staying at home and you like what you do. So this is one point that I had to make sure it's stated. Another thing, answering your question, in order to make sure that you excel in any industry, specifically a tech focus or a tech focused industry, you have to make sure that you know what you want and you love what you do. For me, for instance, I studied marketing. I worked in a couple of agencies, but then I thought this is not what I want to do. I want to shift to a more people-oriented job, and that's what I did. Being a fresh grad, I'm sure that people like to explore. This is totally fine. Exploring, being part of a graduate program, a rotational program. A lot of multinationals and a lot of regional companies are now implementing a rotational program where each fresh grad will have a chance to work in a department for a couple of months to make sure they explore different departments, to make sure that they have what it takes, and to give them a chance to know whether they would excel in it in the future or not. So this is one good way to go. I know that many people graduate with the motivation that I want a full-time job. I don't want to start with an internship or so forth. I don't actually recommend this. I would recommend the opposite. I would recommend you to go on, try as much as you can, take a lot of internships, take a lot of graduate programs in order to make sure that where you end up as where you would love. Another thing is being digital, being online, having a footprint or having a blueprint on all your social media platforms. We no longer for instance, we do not accept any hard copy CVs now. Your LinkedIn is your profile, is your CV. If you're not 100% active on LinkedIn, you're no longer accepted, or you're no longer part of the pipeline or the talent pool. For instance, today we were just informed that Noon has been selected one of the top LinkedIn brands in 2020 across the region. And this is how we were able to leverage social media during the pandemic. We've created a lot of growth on the followers. We've created a huge talent pool from LinkedIn because people now are actually at home and are available to check their LinkedIn and be available more on social media. I think also to excel, you need to be well aware of what's happening around you. You're no longer allowed to be in your own bubble. You have to be aware of what's happening globally because the talent pool is now global. I'm no longer required to hire someone from Egypt to work in Egypt. I can hire someone from Canada to work in Egypt because the pandemic has allowed us to do so. So be a global citizen, not just someone living in your bubble, focus on what you do or focus on what you want to, what you're interested in. You have to be aware of what's going around you, what's happening in other competitors, what's happening in the talent, in the industry itself. That's it. I'd be happy to take questions.
Right, thank you very much, Yasmine. I think this is extremely inspiring, and it probably provides a lot to our students, how they think about their future and what they should be building and how they could explore internships and opportunities and look at this new global world as a global citizen, but also look at the new technologies and the new trends. So this is very, very exciting. So I do not want to take more time of the Q&A. I just want to mention that overall in education, we would love to expand the entrepreneurial spirit, the entrepreneurial skills, and this is what we hope to do. An event like this is an integral part of the educational experience, in my view, because all the students and even the alums need to be exposed to the success stories, to the people who have they can learn from. So I guess that this is something critical. And I really encourage our students to be involved in this because it's not just about the classroom, it's about being involved in real life activities and also being exposed to people and exposed to mentors like Hassan was mentioning. And that's what we'll try to do as much as possible, not only in our programs. So we hope that the students also recognize that. And I'm very happy that we have a great audience up there. So I do not want to take more time off you. So I would love to entertain as many questions as you want. So please raise your hand and I will take you by order. And if you want to write your question on a chat, that's an alternative way, but I will prioritize the hands first and I will read the chats and see if I can ask these questions too. And please address the question to one of the speakers or more. All right, so I would love to see some hands raised on the chat. So we have a question from Nihal. Okay, we have here. I'll read the question from Nihal and then I'll move to Ali. A question to Omar from Nihal. How do you see the future of e-commerce when it comes to fresh food versus the traditional shopping in supermarkets? So that's the first question. Next, I'll move to Ali Farouk. Omar.
Talking on mute. I think that's one of the things that we all say a lot now. Oh, I was talking on mute because we're always on either Zoom or Chime or any other communication channel. Great question, Nihal. So first of all, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't really tell you what the future is going to look like. But fortunately, we support many companies at Payfort that are leading that space, companies like InstaShop and others that really kind of redefined, how particularly pantry, but groceries in your case, when we talk about fresh food, I think the most important thing when it comes to the innovation is the supply chain, or the cold chain, rather, than how they call it, how they refer to it. So how do you, how do you get fresh produce, to the consumer, fairly quickly? And in order to do that, you really need to have, local supply. And I think that's one of the reasons Amazon was very curious into the Whole Foods business, because Whole Foods over the years in the US has developed a very strong relationship with local suppliers. So when you go to Whole Foods, you're not buying something, if you're in California, you're not consuming anything from Nebraska, you're consuming maybe something from Northern California, versus thousands of miles away. So how do you be super local when it comes to procurement, and when it comes to developing your supply chain? I think would be super important. And then the second thing that comes with fresh food is how do you make sure that the quality of the food, the quality of the product, expiry, the weather conditions that we live in. So myself and Hassan, we live in the GCC, and in summertime the temperature rate reaches 50 degrees. So if the vehicle is not prepared to take that, or the entire supply chain is not prepared to support that, it would fail. And of course, usually when it comes to fresh food, the consumption cycle is much faster as well. It's not like I'm going to buy fresh food, I'm going to put in the fridge for a month, because by definition it's not fresh anymore. So a lot of FMCG companies, they'll say we go back to the store for a top up. So you go to Carrefour once a month and you buy a carload of groceries. But when it comes to the fresh food, you will go back to your local store to procure that fresh food, whether it's a salad or fresh meat or fresh fish. So how do you build that that supply chain? And of course, there's a lot of models. So if you look at Instacart in the US, the way they were trying to solve for that is that they would hire individuals, and those individuals would actually walk the aisles of Instacart, and then they would pick those products, and then they put them on the shelf. Of course, I gave the example of InstaShop in the region. If you look at Amazon, we started with Amazon Go. The selection was, mainly compact, more designed for, I want to grab something for lunch type of a customer, or I want to grab something that I want to prepare at home when I go home and cook. Now we've expanded the selection with Amazon Fresh. We just opened the second location also in California, in my hometown of Irvine, California. So, and that continues to grow. And of course, leveraging the supply chain and making sure that the products are really fresh, in good condition, and delivering it, and, investing in last mile. So, at Amazon, we have Amazon Flex, which essentially allows us to create our own on-demand driver network that can actually, go and pick up the products and deliver it, to your doorstep. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Omar. I would like to entertain a question from Ali Farouk. Please go ahead.
Hello, Omar. How are you? My name is Ali Ahmed. My question, can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is, how do you see like a fintech like startup like Payfort would help in consumer to consumer commerce? Something like, for example, the OLX. How will it facilitate commerce between consumers in a way where the whole process can be automated, where people can receive payments through, like e-wallets, for example.
Okay, great question. So Anna, I always tell the team at Payfort, especially early on, as Hassan mentioned, we started Payfort 2013, and we started it because of necessity. So as the country manager in Egypt for Souk, I think we had two big pain points. One was payments, and the other one was logistics. And our solution was, okay, let's start two companies. And there was the emergence of both QExpress and Payfort out of that exercise to kind of solve some of these pain points on behalf of our customers. And after moving to the payment side, I quickly realized that, we're plumbers. Our job is to really, build all these different connections with banks, with different payment methods. And these connection scores, they get blocked, they get clogged, they get broken. They get flooded because all of a sudden you have a lot of transactions that are coming in. You want to do cross-border transactions. So I think we're still in the plumbing phase in terms of what we really see in terms of the infrastructure of commerce. That's what we're really keen on doing. And that's why we've been, our mantra was, how do we expand quickly? As Dr. Tolba mentioned in the beginning, we expanded in 8 different countries in 4 years. And I can tell you that myself and the entire management team was literally on a flight 3 times a week. I had one of our commercial director was in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan in less than 48 hours. So there was a lot of plumbing to be done, but I think there's a lot of work to be done still. So integrating with local payment methods, whether it be Meda in Saudi or Saded or Misa in Egypt or Value or KNet or NAPS and so forth, but also trying to build those railways and look at different use cases. Because I remember when we used to go to the bank and say, hey, by the way, there's a problem with the customer experience and it's broken and this is how we want to fix it. And the bank mindset was always, here are your guardrails and this is where you need to operate in those guardrails. But we were like, but why do we have these walls? No, we don't know. It's just these walls have always been there. So as part of the innovation process and as far as disruption, the true disruption is that what is the new customer insight? And you highlighted P2P transfers, which is a big use case. There are 19 million customers in Egypt that did a P2P transaction in the last 3 years. Only 10% of them are active on a monthly basis. But when you look at the consumer insight, but you also have to look at the value chain insight and the technology insight. And when you put all of these together, of course, getting those insights, rather, I would like to say new insights, not an insight that has been around for 10 years when people's like, I am unbanked, I want to be banked. I'm like, great, well, we've been trying to do that for 20 years. The question is, what is that new insight that you and the team that you're working with would say, here's how we want to solve that particular problem. And this is the customer insight. And unfortunately, as human beings, we get excited very quickly. So we tend to, the minute we start hearing anecdotes from customers about their problems, like, okay, I got it. And then we run to the solutioning phase fairly quickly. And then Dr. Tolba mentioned design thinking in the beginning. So in design thinking, or in Amazon, we have called customer obsession, is we tend to kind of slow down and try to really figure out exactly what is the problem that we're trying to solve and peel the onion on that problem and then start looking, into 5 years from now of how that problem is going to evolve or that opportunity, and how do we really build for scale, as opposed to, oh, I'm going to go get an edge case of customers and I won't be able to cross-sell, or I won't be able to, enable them to actually adopt, other use cases that would make your business sustainable and profitable. I'm sorry?
Can I add another part? Just another part of the question.
Dr. Tolba?
The sound is very low, Ali, and can you write your question on the chat so that we can entertain more questions, please?
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a lot of questions, so I'll go. I wrote the order, so I'm going to alternate between chat and hands. So I'll start with Naila, who has asked 2 questions. The first question is directed to Yasmine. How did she ensure that people are productive while working from home? Yasmine.
Well, I mean, it's quite basic. We've had to do a couple of changes. For instance, normally before the pandemic, while we used to work at the office, we used to have quarterly check-ins with each manager. Each manager would be required to check in with the team, speak to them about their KPIs and their performance after we were required to stay at home, and it seems like we will be for some time. We've changed it to a monthly checkup instead of a quarterly. And we've stayed at home from March up till October. We've had 7 monthly checkups, and all the feedback and all the evaluation we've received from all managers so far, that even the mediocre performers we've witnessed a huge change in their performance, because as you can tell, we've saved time from the commute to the office, we've saved time in the socialization in the office and so forth. When most of our employees are on call with the new campaigns happening and our increases in and our the increase in our portfolio and so forth, numbers speak, and all the KPIs have been achieved. But it's basic. Most of the times we speak to the managers.
All right, thank you, Yasmine. There is another question in the chat from the Business Association. I guess it's addressed to Hassan. Do you think investors have already seen too many startups in the e-commerce space and might shift towards other relatively nascent sectors?
You know, my go-to in situations like this is I have no idea. I will invest in the best founders doing whatever it is they think they need to be doing. There's a case study earlier this year. I invested in a founder that was doing something which I was like, well, this doesn't seem that great. I don't know how you're going to scale this, but I really like you, so I'm gonna give you some funding and see what happens. And since February till now, he's grown his business 20x and has reached like basically $4 million a year in revenues in less than a year. So what do I know? Like, that's basically my learning from all of this is I have no idea. I just invest. But I think it's just about, you know, if someone comes up to me and has 0 differentiating factors, is doing something exactly the same as 10 other people, they really need to convince me why they are the people that I need to be investing in, because, you know, usually it's not rocket science to figure out these concepts and stuff. I am a bit fed up and tired of all the on-demand businesses and things with 0 differentiation. So like, try and not do the same thing as some other people have already done like a year ago and have raised funding for and have gotten a lot further, unless you can prove to me really why you're the person I should be backing. I think I don't think I'm going to invest in as many e-commerce businesses as I had before, because I've already done a bunch of those verticals already. But I still see huge opportunity of a lot of different things which are untapped, and a lot of areas within e-commerce that still need a lot of work and someone that really builds and dedicates onto that. So if you're going to come to me and say, I want to do a generalist sort of thing like Amazon or whatever, yeah, I probably wouldn't really pay that much attention. But again, I can be proved wrong by just showing me numbers and so saying, yeah, this is what we're able to achieve. And yeah, I do not have an exaggerated sense of importance. I actually know my limitations, and I've been proven wrong many, many times. And I really like that when founders do that to me. That's great. So yeah, I'm still open to investing in e-commerce businesses, but always look for niches, something a little different, and prove to me why you're a team I should be backing.
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
And I think Hassan put it adequately, but I think when you look at the e-commerce space, we always think about the storefront, you know, the website that I'm visiting and I'm buying, or the app that I'm buying from. But when you start looking at the value chain and the supply chain from all the way from the distributor to the supplier to the courier company, you'll find that there's a lot of problems that we really need to be solving in terms of, I can tell you in Egypt, for example, when we first started, you know, we would get a list, an Excel sheet from a very prominent brand in Egypt. So we get excited, we list it on the site, and then let's say we sell 100 orders, and then we call them the next day, hey, you know, we want to come pick up the product. Oh, we don't have the product. Oh, you just sent me the Excel sheet yesterday. Oh, sorry, there was a problem in the Excel sheet, and our system is not connected with the warehouse, and this and that. So there's a lot of things in the downstream. When you start looking downstream, when you start looking upstream, you'll find that there's a lot of opportunities. And the good thing that's actually happening in Egypt, I think there was a couple of companies that are really trying to solve for, you know, last mile. And one company, I can't remember the name, they figured out, oh, every you know, courier needs to go and have a a time slot to deliver to like a big Carrefour or a big chain, and they just figure out how you build an electronic queue so you don't wait as much, in line. So there's a lot of these opportunities. The only thing you need to make sure that the opportunity, that the build is not more expensive than the opportunity itself, and you're not really solving for the edge cases, but you're solving for the mass. And if you do anything with mass, like I want to onboard 30 million mom and pop stores in Egypt, and this is what I'm going to solve for, then this becomes a compelling argument to any investor.
Thank you. I mean, that's an extremely important point, and I thank you for the great elaboration. There is a follow-up question related to that, which is by Shadin. How do you differentiate Me Too entrepreneur from a passionate entrepreneur? This is what Hassan has mentioned in his presentation. So how can you spot them?
With a lot of experience of investing in the wrong founders, I think that's really what it is. I know what not to invest in. I think that's really the thing now. But honestly, look, there's a lot of people out there that are come to me with an idea or a pitch deck and be like, please fund me so I can get this started. That's not the right way, right? You get something started, show me what it is you want to do by doing a little bit of it. And then that's when I'll be interested to fund it. But because, I wake up every morning and I have 100 ideas of great ways that the world would be better if this idea existed, but I don't execute any of them. It doesn't really matter, right? So if you can show me some level of execution, some level of an MVP, an indication that you will do this with or without me, then that really is something that's really valuable, right? So there's a lot of founders that go and they try to fundraise and they go to VC funds just with an idea. And in some markets, maybe that works, but in general, in our market, that's not really what we're looking for. We need a little bit of an extra filter. So build a team, co-founding team that solves problems with each other, a technical talent plus a business person and maybe a marketing person as a group, have the technical guy build an MVP for you. You don't really need to spend any money. It's just time really to get that off the ground. And then figure out how to acquire some users or customers. And honestly, that's pretty much it. That's how I'll differentiate between someone who really believes in what it is they're working on and can execute and do that, rather than just someone who comes up with an idea and a very nice PowerPoint presentation. I mean, sometimes they're not even nice PowerPoint presentations. So that's the case.
Fair enough. So students, yes, PowerPoint presentations are important, but the content and the activity and the implementation is much more important. So be practical. Thank you for mentioning that. There was a hand by Yasmine. Yasmine, you're still interested in asking the question, or you move to the one after?
My question was also for Mr. Hassan, but it was answered throughout the two responses by Mr. Omar. But thank you guys very much for your speeches. I really enjoyed them, and I'll come up with more questions later on.
Thank you, Yasmine. So we have another question in the chat from Naila again. What do you anticipate for the acceleration in trends we have seen due to COVID after it eventually ends? This is to Omar. So the future after, so the new normal will stay, or we're gonna have some shift back?
Well, again, so going back to my first comment is that, COVID didn't really create trends, it just accelerated them. And, whether business is growing or shrinking, with few exceptions, whether it be travel or entertainment and events, they got really hit probably the most, and hospitality. But I think, I think we're becoming more digitally native. I remember in the 90s when I first sent my first email, I'm sure 95% of the people that are on this call were born and they found the internet. It's not something that you've adopted. So as we become more digitally native, it's not a matter of, I'm gonna choose not to use, digital channels or apps. I mean, of course it's a choice, but I think the most expensive commodity today in the world is time, and we want more of it. So the only way to get more of our time back is to actually, try to outsource some of the services. So Amazon launched Amazon Home Services a few months ago in the UAE, and I became my wife's champion because, you know, it's like, oh, you know, there's a leak, and the plumber comes in the house two hours later. Oh, you know, you know, the electricity went out, you know, and electrician comes, you know, 2 hours later. So the alternative was to me is to go and, you know, search on Google and get the telephone number and call and, you know, give them the location, arrange for time and arrange for payment. So eventually for that practicality and convenience, you will find more customers and more consumers, you know, adopting different, you know, payment methods or different, shopping experiences. The question is, how do you create an incentive to let them adopt and build ramps for them to actually adopt it faster? So COVID was one of those ramps that allow people to kind of, you know, say, wait a second, why am I doing this? And although we've seen that people have gone out in the UAE, we had a month and a half that is a complete lockdown. We literally did not leave the house for a month and a half. We're not allowed to. You know, so the only way where you to get the product is, you know, by shopping online. But we still see a lot of customers that did not. Maybe the frequency is lower, but still they would still, let's say if they were shopping once a month before COVID, now they're shopping 4 or 5 times a month. So the frequency and the recency has definitely increased. And of course, as we talk, and you know, hopefully Hassan would invest quickly in the 120 companies, so we can reduce that amount of white space, so we can have, you know, more products and services available to, you know, consumers and small and medium-sized enterprise and others in the region.
All right, thank you. This is fantastic. So let's move on to another question from the chat. So we have Siraj asking to Hassan, both Hassan and Omar, what do you think if someone can send shipment from the US, I guess, to Egypt within 1 day? Would you probably, what would Amazon react to that, and what would Hassan invest or not?
I mean, you can. There's nothing impossible. But 1 day, the only option will be air freight. So the question is, what are you shipping, and what is the metric ton or the measurements of it, and how much is it going to cost you to ship it air freight, and what is the margins of that particular product that you're trying to ship? So yes, if I'm one of those convenient quadrant, which is let's say 10 or 15 or 20%, I'm not concerned about price leadership, and I'm not concerned about, you know, selection, but I really want it in 1 day. What you have to look at, what are those items that you really need to have in 1 day. Like I shop a lot from the US. I play tennis, and Tennis Warehouse has probably the biggest selection in the world. So I get it, but it takes 10 days. I'm okay with it. You know, it's fine. So you have to ask yourself, what are you solving if you're shipping a product from the US to Egypt in 1 day? And what does the order economics look like? Hassan?
Yeah, I don't really know why that matters in most situations. I think if there's a startup in Egypt or a company in Egypt that's delivering within 24 hours, why does it have to come from the US? So like there's a lot of, I think the question's a little bit vague. And honestly, I received some Amazon orders from the US within a few days, within a day, which was actually pretty cool. I did not expect that. But I don't know. Like, honestly, I think that US to region is valuable because there is a difference in sort of the selection, as Omar said. That's the only reason that I would probably do it. And so I choose selection over time, so I wouldn't really care if it took a day or 2 or whatever. But I think where I see things going is more localized expertise and localized e-commerce that actually will be able to deliver not within 1 day, but within even less than a day. We've seen there's a couple of our startups that have been working on it, and they managed to get their delivery times from 2 days down to 1 day, and now they're trying to get it down to less than a day. We invested in a startup called O2 in Saudi, which is trying to use existing infrastructure in shops in order to try and get delivery times of products down to 2 hours. So why should you get your food within an hour and not a product that's probably just the same amount of distance away from your house if it's in one of the stores or something like that? And so I think that's important and that's interesting, but yeah, I don't know. Like I wouldn't really care that much if it was a company that was getting me something from the US within a day, and it was probably the item was $20 and the shipping was $150. I really don't think that would be valuable to me.
All right, thank you both. Let's move to another question in the chat from Omar Ziad. Thank you for your note, Omar, and you're asking Hassan here about your business, about doing business in Iraq, and whether given the weak 3G network and the non-established e-payment, where would that be an opportunity to invest in such markets? And is it promising or could motivate you as investors? So just the perspective in that. So Hassan.
Yeah, I think every obstacle is an opportunity to solve that problem and basically build a business around it, right? So whatever are the obstacles that you see that you can solve and resolve within markets like Iraq or any other markets, I think that there's value in that, because it's not just an obstacle that you face, it's an obstacle that a lot of other people face, and you can build a business around that. I think Iraq's an amazing market. I've been studying it a lot closer over the last year or so. It has its challenges naturally, as you might expect, but I think it's a massive population. It's a very young population, digitally connected in general. There's issues related to connectivity, security, and all that sort of stuff, but you know, no place in the world is perfect. So if you can show me that you can overcome these obstacles and build a business in this market despite everything, you're a great founder. So definitely I'd be interested in investing in people like that.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to Yusuf who's has raised his hand. So Yusuf.
Yes, so my name is Yusuf Yahya, and my question is to Omar. So if there's a company that sells a product, not a service, and this company has zero social media presence, they didn't go digital yet, and they're trying to increase their customer awareness through going digital. So what's your advice for them? Like, what the first step they should take? Should they go right away and create a website, or just go create a social media account and post, sponsored posts related to their product?
Well, I mean, have you gone through validation in terms of you have a business and there's demand for that particular product, and you're selling it at a price point where it's attractive? I mean, I think the question that I'm trying to ask is that, before you even look about how you're going to create awareness, do you have a minimal viable product, and do you have a business case that did you prove your hypothesis that you do have a product? Like, the best companies, it could happen just by word of mouth, so, don't take the word of mouth lightly in the beginning. When people, appreciate your product, you might get 5 orders a week, and then 50 orders a week, and then 500 orders a week. So if you're selling, if you really are able to come to a formula where you say the economics make sense, the fulfillment makes sense, the demand makes sense, customers are happy with the product, there are repeat buyers. If you're able to answer these questions, then what channel that you need to use in order to scale, I think becomes a good question to answer. But it sounds like you're taking your first footsteps. So I would think about your natural network first, which is your friends and family. See how they consume the product. What did they like? What they didn't like? How was the packaging? How was the delivery? If you're actually delivering the product, or if they're picking it up, how was that experience look like? So focus more on the experience, focus more on the product, the pricing, the supply, all these different things. And if it works on a very small scale, then you know that, okay, I have solid grounds to stand on, and you're validating your assumptions without making a lot of investments. So when you make mistakes down the line, you can actually those mistakes, we're always going to make mistakes, but at least those mistakes will cost you less in terms of capital and time. I hope that answers your question.
If I could add to that a little bit, maybe, I think there's a lot of ways to test all of this without really expending a lot of time and money yourself. You can put your product on Amazon or Noon or whatever, or some other local platform and see whether it sells or not, and piggyback on their efforts, their marketing, their customer acquisition. You'll give up a bit of your margins, but you have a lot of headache that's been removed, and a lot of it shortens your time. Once you see that there is some demand for what you're trying to sell, then you start looking at other platforms. Maybe like, we've invested in a company called Wilt, which is get to build your own website without really having to have just a drag and drop sort of thing. There's Expand Cart, there's Alpha Market, and a few others that all sort of help you not have to worry about a lot of the other stuff you need to think about when you're doing your own e-commerce thing. But I'd agree with Emma. I think, test it somehow. And I think the easiest way is just go and put your product on a market, on something that already exists, and see whether people will buy it.
Thank you. I have another question from Nihal at the chat to Yasmine. Do you think that working from home will continue to be the new normal, having so many companies now sustaining and delivering work?
I mean, I can't say for sure, but I believe that it will continue to be our new normal for some time. And even if some companies decided to ask their employees to go back, it would not be on a 100% basis, and it would not be an obligatory option. I think it will not be an obligatory thing for them to come back. It will be still optional. And we used to provide flexibility as an additional benefit from us to the newcomers or to the new joiners or the candidates in general. I think this will no longer be the case. I think it will be most companies, new companies specifically, would be providing flexibility as a given. It will not be some sort of a benefit. Most employees they're very opinionated, and they think it should be provided. So I do believe that at least for this first quarter of 2021, it will still people will still continue to work from home, but then it will be on a rotational basis or on a half capacity basis.
All right, thank you.
Can I add to that? So I think the pandemic has really proved that you don't have, like Yasmine said early on, you don't have to be at work in an office setting to actually work. And we think that when we go back to the office, and we just announced that we're not going back until next year in June, it's going to be more about collaboration. So when we're going into the office, you're going there to collaborate, not just to go sit in the office for like 10 minutes, 10 hours a day and work. Actually, we're coming up with systems to book desks and stuff like that. So while I'm in the office that particular day and I have 2 collaboration sessions and I have 2 hour window and I need to sit somewhere, I can actually book a desk. So I ensure that I have a place to sit and work. So I think work is going to be more, at least the workspace is going to be more about collaboration versus, I'm going to have to be 9 to 5 and drive and get stuck in traffic. And I think when you look at work-life harmony, the 9 to 5 is also changing, or the 9 to 6 is also changing, because you'll have calls in the day and then at night and then in the afternoon. So, what we do now at Payfort and Amazon is that we don't have meetings on Thursday. We don't have calls on Thursday. We have people, what they call a block, what we call day breaks. So I can have a 2-hour day break, and I block my calendar throughout the week. So people cannot book me. I can go pick up my daughter from school, or I can go play tennis from 11 to 12 because I don't have any, other time to play that. So having that work-life harmony, not balance, but having that work-life harmony is probably going to become very important moving forward.
Thank you. Work-life harmony is a new term that I really enjoyed. So I would love to build on that, yes. Well, we hope that does not reach the level that you work over the weekend as well, so, because that's starting to become a trend. Ali was asking a follow-up question in the chat. It's addressed to Hassan. Should I be looking for investors as early stage e-commerce P2P platform? I'm in the MVP stage, but the app is not yet launched. I've proven the presence of supply and onboarded a lot of suppliers. However, how can I prove the purchasing power?
Honestly, at this stage, your best bet is to go and maybe raised from an accelerator program or something. You know, if you're in Egypt, there's a bunch of great options, Fat6 Labs, Felek, and a few others. So I would probably recommend that rather than trying to raise investment from VCs or anything at this stage, or maybe angel investors or something. You know, once you launch the app, that's when you'll be able to really see that transactions are taking place and that this is something that's valuable to people. I think if you have a one-sided marketplace, it doesn't really work. You need to have both sides to really show that this is valuable to both sides of the equation. And it's a balance. A marketplace is a hard thing to figure out, because if you onboard a bunch of suppliers but there's no one that's buying from them, after a while they'll just get bored and not really participate. If you try to onboard a bunch of buyers and there's nothing for them to buy, then they'll lose interest and not be there anymore as well. So you gotta figure out, you know, focus on one for a bit and then focus on another and then try to build both together. So marketplaces are hard. They're not an easy thing to do. But honestly, like, you know, you'd get a lot more advice, guidance, and support from an accelerator program. I think that might be a good way for you to get somewhere, and get a little bit of funding as well to help you. And I'd recommend that, honestly. Unless you can figure it out yourself without any help or money, then yeah, that's great. That's perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. There is a question by Abdullah Ragal. Abdullah.
Hello, my name is Abdullah Ragal. I have a question to Hassan and a question to Omar. The first question to Hassan, what do you think are the next 10 hot industries for startups in the Middle East? Like for the past 10 years, it was fintech, and throughout the past few years, it was ride sharing like Uber, Careem, etc. So what do you think are the hot industries for like the upcoming 5 or 10 years in the Middle East?
I have no idea. Sorry, man. That's not the answer you wanted to hear. But honestly, like I don't know what's gonna happen in the next 10 years. I don't even know what's gonna happen tomorrow with most of the companies that we invested. So I wish I could pontificate. I could come up with an answer, but it wouldn't really be real. It would probably be a waste of everyone's time. Honestly speaking, I think it really doesn't matter what sector's hot. It matters about the quality of the founders and are they building something they're passionate about and believe in, or are going to make sure that that thing succeeds, right? So that's my criteria. It's not a top-down sector level. Oh, I'm looking for things in fintech, or I'm looking for things in entertainment, or in IoT or SaaS or whatever. Like I'm looking for great founders who believe in whatever it is that they're working on. So I'm not the best person to pontificate on that. There's a lot of other people that will have much better sort of ideas of what's going to be great and what's not. And I'm just not one of those people. I think I have zero clue what's going to happen next month or next year. Or did I know that there was going to be a pandemic? No, I don't think any of us did. So like it's difficult to answer that question without just making something up. Honestly, I'm looking for great people that are building something they believe in.
All right, thank you. That's a very interesting answer, and I think that's the way to go. If we all know what will happen next, I mean, or everybody will jump in the same boat, right?
Ahmed, can I ask the second question to Omar? Omar, what do you think is the biggest threat for your business model? Like, for example, the e-wallets and the Apple Pay and these sort of paying options. And do you think the digital currencies might replace the payment options found now for any platform?
It's a good question. So, so first of all, you know, our current business model, we have we're a payment service provider. So essentially, we aggregate different payment methods, and we offer them to merchants along with many other services, whether it be reconciliation, settlement, fraud management, how do they manage their infrastructure of data, and how they can use that information to intelligently manage their customer experience better, installments, increase affordability. And we've integrated with all those different payment methods. So of course, as we evolve, and to the question, to earlier question in this one, only 4% or maybe less than 4% of the region GDP is online or done electronically. And you have 380 million people that live in the Middle East. And of course, our territory is not only Middle East, but also Africa, which is probably, the last frontier in terms of wielding opportunities. So I think there's a lot of space to grow, and I don't see one incumbent going in and look, payment is very local. So you have KNET, for example, which is the local debit card in Kuwait, has 80% market share, but KNET cannot go outside of Kuwait by design, right? So the only way for the Kuwaiti customer to transact outside of Kuwait is that they have to have a financial instrument that can actually help them, whether it's a Visa or MasterCard or American Express or an Apple Pay or whatever. So again, how do you think about local? And then our job is to actually enable our merchants to, understand what are the problems they're trying to solve for, and kind of help them, do that. So one is enabling them, and then secondly is how do we protect them as well while they're testing and learning. And also, of course, when you're transacting online, there's a lot of sometimes there are fraud and information security concerns and so forth. So how do we double down on information security, and which is